Hey guys, Hikos here. Just doing something that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, I guess. Uh, so I'm sure most people are well aware by now that there is a complete lack of guides on the class forums, on the official Rift forums, and especially a lack of cleric guides. And there's a decent Inquisitor guide, not really any decent healing guides, and there's definitely no decent Shaman guide. And obviously, Shaman being my passion, um, I thought I'd do that guide first. Um, I mean, the reason for the lack of guides is a lot of the players who used to make guides have subsequently quit the game, and the rest of the people who might be inclined to make a guide are permaban on the forums, such as myself. So hopefully this video manages to find its way onto there. If not, then say la vie. But the primary reason for making this is so that I don't have to sit down for 2 hours each time I get a new recruit and explain to them and try and break their bad habits from the 2-button macro shaman they managed to get off the forums. So, just a disclaimer, this isn't your 2-button macroed shaman that you can play and do reasonable DPS and that I don't really care about. This is a guide on how to play shaman properly at the highest level. Not that it's that difficult. Rift is not a difficult game, and most people will be able to pull this off with practice. So I'm not going to talk about UI or key bindings, just to mention the fact that to play this spec at a level, to play the spec properly at a level, you need at least 20 keybinds. If you don't have at least 20 keybinds, then you are missing out on at least some form of utility, if not some form of DPS. You can play with a lot more, it gives you a lot more options, but you need at least 20 to be able to pull this off, I think, with success. Okay, so whether you're new to the game and want to just pick up the spec and start playing it properly, or you're a bit older and you'd like to, see the potential of Shaman, then this is probably the place to be. Alright, so jumping straight into it, this is the number 1 DPS spec for clerics at the moment. 61 Shaman, obviously, so fill that up. 8 Inquisitor, 5 out of 5 in Planar Study, and 3 out of 5 in Corporal Punishment, and 7 Druid, 5 out of 5 in Speak Softly, 2 out of 5 in Curial. That is assuming that Shroud of Agony isn't proccing enough to make that a DPS game. Genoscoth is the only real example I can think of which is a redundant fight. Nothing in T2 should require you to go Shroud of Agony that I can think of. And then your masteries are 3, 4, 3, 3, 3. No real variation on that, especially these top 3. The only one is possibly Blessing of Penitence becoming Healing Remnant if there is some mechanic that your healers are struggling with and it's just to relieve some healing pressure with the reapplication of Shield Evoke, and you don't have to go out of melee range too often to need that fervent strike. Okay. So, macros, and Shaman is definitely a very macroable spec, but there are some warnings with that. If you just use macros, you will lose DPS. Okay, so you do need to have the ability separated on your bars too, even if you're primarily hitting the macros 90-95% of the time. There are only 2 macros you should be using, maybe 4 depending on how you count them. So this is the non-physical macro. You can pause the video, take a look. There's only 3 abilities, not hard. Cool, copy paste. So that's the non-physical macro. Here's the physical macro, and there's a few more abilities. Frozen Wrath is in there really just as a remnant of when it used to have a cooldown, and it's your highest priority DPS. You can probably take it out, although it doesn't hurt having it in there either. Whatever, set your OCD off. Why I said there could be 4 macros is because these are your 2 target macros. So when you have 2 targets, these are your macros you use. So I won't go into that, but there's a different rotation for a 2 target fight. Don't worry about that for now. The 5th macro you could use is this one. which is just your spell strikes on your Rush of Strength, which I'll explain a little bit later, but I have it up here so I don't waste spell strikes all the time, because I'm poor, as you can see. So that's potentially a 5th macro, although it's, not necessarily really a macro. Alright. So those are your macros. And now, into playing the spec. Okay, so your opener is very specific. Right? You can preload, but it doesn't matter. Your Archon needs to put up flaring by the 3rd GCD. Okay? Sorry, flaring by the 3rd GCD and lava on the 3rd GCD. Okay, so debuff, debuff, flaring lava is what your Archon should be doing. And if they're not, yell at them and tell them I said they were wrong. They can even precast if they're like, oh, but I need to get my debuffs up, my buffs up. You can tell them to hard cast Earthen on the pool. Okay? Which your tank should be doing a countdown for. Okay, so given all of that, your opener is Frozen Wrath. Sorry, non-physical macro. Frozen Wrath. Rage of the North. Punishing Strike. Lightning Hammer. Sanctioned Heretic. Which is 4 GCDs out of melee range. Okay? So you should definitely be in melee by the time you do that. 5 seconds into the fight, you should be in melee. It's not hard. Alright? Then you go Deep Freeze. Then Massive Blow. Then Rush of Strength. Then Jolt. Then Massive Blow. Okay? If you're using a two-hander, and this is why I prefer main hand offhand for the spec, is you need to delay the Deep Freeze until the end of the GCD in which you are going to use it. Because you get animation lag on the Massive Blow with a two-hander, and you will not get the bonus on the second Massive Blow if you don't do that. Okay? From that point onwards in the rotation, it's fairly self-explanatory. Non-physical, physical, non-physical, physical, non-physical, physical. Cool. You keep your dots off when they fall off. Okay? And you use Rush of Strength on cooldown. Pretty much. The times in the rotation that it changes a little bit, alright? And you'll see when I'll give you an example in a second, are after the Rush of Strength, and as you're coming up to the cooldown block again. The whole point of the rotation, the biggest part of the rotation that people do poorly, is the cooldown block. The cooldown block needs to be perfect every time, and it needs to line up with Lava Field and Wild Growth. Okay? So the cooldown block is always Rage of the North, Punishing Strike, Lightning Hammer, Sanctioned Heretic, Massive Blow, Rush of Strength, Jolt, Massive Blow. That is the premise of the rotation, and that's what it's built around. Okay? And so for that to happen, you need to use your last Punishing Strike on your last set of dots before your cooldowns are up. You need to use Punishing Strike when there's 8 seconds left on your dots, so that you don't let your dots fall off for too long, or at all, and you can go straight into your cooldown block so you don't delay it for lava or flaring. So that involves some tweaking and playing with the rotation to make sure that's when Punishing Strike comes up. Okay, so after the Rush of Strength, your Punishing Strike will be 2 GCDs away. So if you went non-physical, physical, non-physical, then Punishing Strike, you would have delayed it by 1 second, right? So what you need to do after the Rush of Strength, in the middle, and you'll see this, is go non-physical, Jolt, or non-physical, non-physical, or Jolt, non-physical, any of those 3 combinations, depending on whether you have a Jolt proc or not, and you should. Then Punishing Strike, so it's not delayed at all, alright? Then the next set of dots come around and you go Massive Blow, Lightning Hammer, Sanctioned Heretic, and Punishing Strike is 4 GCDs away, and Massive Blow is 3. And so basically you do delay it this time by going, instead you could go non-physical, non-physical, physical, non-physical, punishing, but instead you go physical, non-physical, physical, non-physical, Massive Blow because it's high in the macro, then non-physical, then punishing, and that's when it lines up with the dot timings. And hopefully, if that was confusing, because it probably sounded confusing, you'll see it in the example pass when I do it. Just a quick note about gear. You want to stack crit power to 2990. Obviously, the spec scales the crit power incredibly well. The crit chance in a raid when you use the crit pot on the Rush of Strength will mean that your second Massive Blow will pretty much always crit. It might not happen on the dummies, but it's like a 99% chance to crit in raid. If you have Focus Fire up, then it's over 100% chance to crit, and you don't have to worry about it. Even without the crit pot, it's still like a 90% chance to crit. So it is okay, and that is definitely the highest opener rotation. So you want to use the Eldritch Crystal and stack crit power to 2900. Obviously spell crit is really good on the spec, but you gain that passively. I wouldn't recommend at this point trying to get it as an actual stat, as a tertiary stat. Alright guys, so just had to fiddle with some settings to get my FPS crazy instrument pass with frames and some rotation. So hopefully anything that wasn't clear in the video, which I probably didn't do a good job of explaining, will be clear when I do my rotation on the dummies now. So some of that lag, so hopefully this goes alright. And so yeah, thanks for watching, I'll talk about some things. So just the opener that I described, standard. This is going to second massive load of crit, it's not nice business. And it will in raid, but on the dummies. So we need to keep passing. What's going up? You prioritize putting Sanction Heretic up then over Massive Blow, because Sanction Heretic has more damage per Massive Blow. You can go and extra something, believe me. So, dots, Rush of Strength, Massive Blow, similar Punishing Strike, 2 GCDs away, you want to use double non-physical and just off the cooldown, like that. You do delay Massive Blow by 1 GCD, but it's definitely worth it. And then you just keep going. So here I said, you know, I used Massive Blow instead of putting dots up by 1 GCD. So they were dots down to about half a GCD just then, but it's to get your Punishing Strike to line up properly with your 8 seconds left into your next cooldown block. Splitting up for half a second. So you're more than welcome to doing that. It's important that you go into exactly that. Okay. And then you just back to square one. Same deal. Physical, non-physical, physical, physical. Dots go up before prioritize section. Keep going, it's the same deal. Rinse and repeat. So the things we haven't talked about are Sikaron, which I'll let you guys figure out for yourselves. Passes in the future, so on you guys. Double target, and really the rationale behind the rotation is just told you this is the way to do it. And if you want a better explanation of exactly why I do the things that I ask me and I'll explain it to you. But if you just want to copy what I do, you can say like that. Obviously things go wrong in the rotation sometimes, and things, you know, you might mess GCD up, and just, you know, generally mess up, and so things aren't going to line up perfectly. That's why you have things that aren't the macros on your bars to be able to recover from those mistakes. That's why they're there. But you can't. If you mindlessly hit the macro, you're going to use Massive Blow, you're going to use Punishing Strike without, you know, having control of when you use it. And you might need to do 2 Icy Blows in a row, and avoid using Physical, you might need to go like Icy Blow, Crushing Blow, Icy Blow, while Punishing Strike is off cooldown, so you don't have to delay your cooldown block. So 84.5k pass. Not bad, no consumables, etc, etc. So you'll get a feel for it, but the most important thing is always non-physical, Rage of the North, Punishing Strike, Lightning Hammer, Sanction Heretic, Deep Freeze, Massive Blow, Jolt, Rush of Strength, Jolt, Massive Blow. Obviously, Frozen Wrath gains the percentage crit chance of your Punishing Strike when it's reapplied, so that's why you do 100% Frozen Wrath crit when you use Punishing Strike like that. Any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. Have fun playing some Shaman, guys. Cheers.